Hey guys, Nuie here, and welcome to my very first full build guide on for my channel. This is going to be a build guide for my Frozen Raider, which is my Blade Vortex build that I've been really working on. Again, this is my first time doing a full guide, so I'm going to try to cover absolutely everything I can about this build. From the basics about the skills all the way up to the full gear setup and playstyle. So I'm going to try not to miss a single thing. I'm going to leave timestamps because I know some people are... It depends on depending on your level of game knowledge, you can skip ahead and get to like the important things like the build setup and the layout and all that stuff. And then I'll also leave the earlier portions are more for newer players who aren't too familiar with the game and don't fully understand how skills work and how they work together. So I want to make sure that I cover absolutely everything. So I'll leave timestamps throughout the video for every single portion. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it covers absolutely everything you would need to know about my build, and I hope you guys enjoy my build and end up playing it. If you do end up playing it, feel free to take a screenshot of that and send it to me. I would love that. You can go to my Twitter and send it to me there, or even send it to me on send it to my email or something like that. And I might, if you guys like it a lot, and I'll put together a video complex of all the images I received. But I'm going to stop rambling here, and I'm going to go ahead and head into the video and discuss absolutely everything I can. So I hope you enjoy. Alright guys, so this portion is going to be the portion where I display how the skills, I describe all of the skills that I use in this build. So this is going to be the portion that, the first portion that more experienced players can kind of skip through. But if you're newer, I would say you definitely should watch this portion, because I'm basically going to go through every single one of the main skills that I use, and then I'm going to describe how they work and how they interact with each other. Now, I am going to, at the end of all of that, I'm going to head over to Path of Building and show you how my link setup works out. So, that's the portion I'm going to drop it off at for veteran players. I'm going to drop it off at just skipping ahead to the link setup, so you guys can see how the link's all set up and how that is all working together. But, heading over here, I'm going to start with the main skill of my build, which is Blade Vortex. How Blade Vortex works is that it does first off, it is a spell. I want to get that out of the way. It's a spell, so no matter what weapon you are using, you can use it. However, it does not account for weapon damage at all. It only accounts for explicit multipliers to spell damage, as well as, in our build, it will also be boosted by elemental damage. So, the best two weapons in that case are scepters, which have the implicit modifier for elemental damage, as well as they can get spell damage added onto them, as well as cast speed. Or you can use wands, which are just flat spell damage and also can get some elemental damage on top of that, as well as cast speed. So those are the two weapons you can use, which is why I'm going to emphasize that this build has two different playstyles, but I'm going to focus on my playstyle, but I'll also present the alternate playstyle to it. Either way, the main skill of the build is going to be Blade Vortex. So Blade Vortex creates ethereal blades which orbit around you in a circle and deal damage every 0.6 seconds to all enemies in their radius, and as you cast it more spells will be added, and then the damage becomes more increased, and then the initial spell itself does physical damage, which is why this build works so well with the way we converted it. It's boosted by physical damage, spell damage, area damage, and just overall damage. So those are things that work well with it. And then because it is physical damage, you can because of the way my build works, I will be converting that physical damage to cold damage. So all of the, not only will it also be boosted by physical damage, it'll also be boosted by cold damage, and then that's how our skill is really going to work. Now, if you can get your hands on it, you want a plus 20, so you get the increased radius on it, as well as a increased quality version of it, so that you get the increased area effect from that. So that's how the main skill works for Blade Vortex. Heading over to the next skill with my first aura. Our first aura will be Hatred, which casts an aura that provides bonus cold damage based on the physical damage of the caster and allies. So, as I scale more physical damage, your physical damage is then converted at a percentage over to cold damage. So it starts out as 26% and then it scales up to 36%. And this one you don't really need a lot of quality on it because it just increases the area, and I have this build more of a solo build, but I mean if you want to run with friends it also works, and then you could also increase that with gemstones and then have the extra radius for everyone else. But the main focus of it is to be able to convert some of our physical damage as cold damage, so you gain that extra cold damage when you're running Hatred. So that's the first buff we will be using. This costs 50% of your mana, so just be aware of that. The mana reservation is 50%. However, when I get to it later, and when I cover the gear portion, I will explain why it's not as severe, and I will also explain why it's not such a big deal. So the next buff I will be using is Herald of Ice. However, I will be linking that with Frostbite. So what Herald of Ice does is it just a 25% mana reservation buff that adds cold damage to your spells and attacks. So once again, more cold damage is always nice. And then I will be using that because Herald of Ice actually hits, unlike Herald of Ash. Herald of Ice and Herald of Lightning hit. So because of that, you can use Curse on hit, I should say, to apply curses to targets. So in our case, we'll be using Frostbite, which is a spell that makes enemies that you hit less resistant to cold damage and gives them a chance to freeze. Basically how Frostbite works is that it curses the targets that are hit and makes them less resistant to cold damage and gives them a chance to be damaged. So like it starts at 25% and then it upgrades to 44% cold resistance, negative cold resistance for enemies that are cursed by it, and then they have a 10 to 14% chance to be frozen by this cold damage that you do. So this is key to our build because once again we are doing large amounts of cold damage is the focus of the build. So this is the main curse that I'll be using, and I will have it linked to my Herald of Ice, which just is a spell that adds extra cold damage to your spells and attacks. So leave that. Heading to the next thing, this is where the build can get split up a little bit. So if you're using scepters, like I prefer to use, you will use Shield Charge, and then Shield Charge you will link it with certain abilities, and I'll get to that at the end. But Shield Charge, how it works is basically it lets you Shield Charge. It's basically just a movement ability. It lets you Shield Charge around. You put your shield in front of you and you dash forward. This point of this skill is not so much damage, but it is to give you a little bit more extra defense, and I'll explain that when I get to the extra portions. But the alternate route, if you're using wands instead, is to go with Flame Dash, as well as, I'll explain that link as well. So you'll go with Flame Dash instead of Shield Charge because wands are not able to use Shield Charge because it is a movement melee attack. Wands do not work with melee attacks, so you would not be able to use Shield Charge, and I did test that out, so 100% certain that you cannot use Shield Charge with a wand. So if you use a wand in this build instead of a scepter, it's not going to work, and you'll have to switch over to Flame Dash. Excuse me for a second. The next ability that works is going to be Warcry. What Warcry does is it grants increased damage and mana regeneration. So this is basically going to be your mana sustain. Instead of getting mana leech, you're going to use this for your mana sustain. So you get mana regeneration from it, and what it also does that you need to be aware of is it taunts enemies around you and forces them to attack you. So if you're running with friends, just be aware of that fact that Warcries will taunt enemies. So if you're wondering why you're running with friends and you're getting focused more, it's because of using this Warcry when you enter battles. You get the increased damage, but it also forces enemies to attack you over your friends. So just be aware of that. The next thing is a Summon Flame Golem. This is just a golem that increases your damage, starting at 15% and going up to 20%. It really has no other purpose besides that. It does a little bit of attacking and a little bit of stuff, but you're not focused on the damage and stuff it does. I do augment it with a couple support gems, but it's not specifically necessary, though having the Flame Golem is super nice for the build. And the last main ability is Frost Bomb. So Frost Bomb is a cold spell that pulses on the ground, and as it pulses on top of an enemy, nearby enemies get reduced cold resistance as well as life regeneration. So this is key to our build for those kind of bosses that leech, as well as just adding extra cold resistance or extra reductions to cold resistance to bosses around you. It also plays another key role, and I'll get to that as soon as I hit the links. But this is the main portion of how I set up all of our this is the main portion of skills that I wanted to cover, and I wanted to make sure for all the newer players I covered every single skill that's involved in it and how they work beforehand. So now I'm gonna head over to the skill section, or the links section, and display all of my links and all of that setup. Alright guys, so progressing our guide, we are now looking at the gem socket portion of our build. So as I'm going to go through all the abilities I have here, and once again I will also cover the alternate path route for you guys. So starting off, we're going to have Blade Vortex regardless of how your path goes. So once again, quickly before I get into this, I'm in a program called Path of Building, and I will leave the link to that in the description below as well. What this does is allow you to create builds and stuff, and really see all of your skills and really work them all together. It also has a damage calculator, as well as you're able to take your character's items and stuff and transpose them into this build in order to be able to view everything you want with the build. So I just wanted to cover that real quickly. But heading back, Blade Vortex is going to be our main skill, and then for the support gems, we want Spell Echo, as well as Elemental Focus and Cold Penetration. That will be our 4-link setup. So it is 2 greens and 2 blues. Spell Echo gives you the increased cast speed, as well as duplicating the amount of blades you get out as you cast it, and then Elemental Focus and Cold Penetration. For leveling, you can actually run cold damage. The damage for that is a little bit better for leveling, but as you get towards the higher end point of the game, cold penetration starts to outweigh it because your cold damage becomes so much more significant. You won't need the actual cold damage support as much, so you can just swap that. And then as you get a 5 and 6 link, you want to run Controlled Destruction and Concentrated Effect respectively. So your 5 link you can get like Controlled Destruction and Concentrated Effect, and then your 6 link you can get Controlled Destruction, and then you're all set up with 6 link. Now, for the change between AoE fights to boss fights, I would switch between increased area of effect and I want to say concentrated effect, so that you're getting the larger amount of area as you're running through the mobs, and then as you're on that single target boss, that's when you switch out that increased area effect and switch out to conc effect, so that you get the larger amount of damage to bosses, and that's how you really burn down bosses. So that's my 4, 5, 6, and 6 link setups for Blade Vortex. Those will all be run on your chest, so just make sure of that. Now you're going to get Hatred. Once again, you're having Hatred. As you can see, I have a level 22 Hatred, so I will discuss that when I get to gear. But Hatred will be on your helmet. And then on your shield, you'll run Herald of Ice, Curse on Hit, and Frostbite. So I was talking about before, Herald of Ice channels ice through your hands, adds cold damage to spells, and then it also allows you to shatter enemies, so there's that. Now for my setup, I run Shield Charge, Faster Tracks, and Fortify, so that as I can dash around, I can dash into enemies and get fortified, and then I get the extra defenses from fortification. But again, if you're doing that alternate path where you're taking a wand instead of a scepter, you will be going Flame Charge, and for that setup, you just do Flame Charge and Faster Casting. Those are the only 2 really things I'd ever use Flame Charge. I can't really figure out any other good skill gems for that, so Flame Charge, Faster Casting is how I'd work that. Now for Rallying Cry, you're going to put this on your weapon. Rallying Cry is going to be Rallying Cry, increased area of effect, and increased duration, so that you get about 30 seconds of rallying, or it's actually about 25 seconds-ish of Rallying Cry's increased duration, so that's what really helps you mana sustain. It also gives you increased damage, and then it just lets you kind of run through, and you don't really have to cast Blade Vortex a lot. You don't really take a lot of damage. It's really nice. So that's Rallying Cry. Summon Flame Golem, as I was talking about before, you don't necessarily need to augment it, but I do augment it, so I get minion damage, minion totem life, and elemental resistance, and then minion life, so that it lasts a little bit longer. Golems have an issue where they can fall behind you, especially with this build. Your clear speed is very, very strong, so you end up running through things very fast, and your golem gets behind, and then it can die to adds, and then you lose that damage, and then resummoning it is just excess time that doesn't need to be wasted. So that's what I run for that, and I socket that on the 4th socket into my boots. And then the last thing I do for my gloves is get a 4 socket link on my gloves, which is Frost Bomb, increased duration, Arcane Surge, and add cold damage. So Frost Bomb, what Frost Bomb does for me is that you put it down, and this is really the only thing you're going to be casting in the middle of fights. Besides like Blade Vortex, this is all you're going to really need to cast, and like Rallying Cry you'll cast every like 30 seconds or so. Frost Bomb you want to cast quite a bit, and then Blade Vortex you don't really need to cast a lot. And I'll explain that when I get to the actual build, the actual tree setup and stuff. You'll see why you don't really need to cast Blade Vortex all that much. But Frost Bomb, what it does for me is, 1, it gives you that cold penetration to enemies, and 2, it also gives you Arcane Surge. Now what Arcane Surge is a new skill gem, it's a new support gem, and what it does is, as you use mana from one ability, and the ability that you use that costs mana, it counts it up, and then after it hits a certain point, then it gives you increased spell damage as well as cast speed. This is huge for this build because, 1, it gives you a lot of cast speed, so when you're casting things, you get that maximum stacks of Blade Vortex stacks very, very quickly between Rallying Cry and Arcane Surge. You'll hit that really, really quickly. It'll be very easy to just destroy bosses. I added an added cold damage just because I already leveled it. Like, you already end up leveling it for when you level through with Blade Vortex with it. So I just kept it on that, and it's just a force link, and I mean, there was nothing really wrong with it. Frost Bomb still does a little bit of damage when it explodes, so why not just add some extra cold damage? So that's my link setup and everything that I have. Those will be on my gloves. So that's everything involved with my link setup. So in the next portion of this build, I will talk about, I will head into the gear that you're going to be using, the gear that I prefer to use, and then I will also talk about a little bit of the alternate. So that will all be in the next portion. Alright guys, so for this portion I'm gonna cover the uniques, all the unique items that are involved with my current with this build. So basically all the uniques that I find are necessary, and all the uniques that and a couple of uniques that are not entirely necessary but are still important. So I'm gonna go through all of that, and then I will head over to Path of Building and show you guys the preferred kind of stats you want in terms of the non-unique items, as far as everything you need for that. So the first unique item you're going to want is the Alpha Wolf's Howl. So what this item does, first off, it's an evasion helm. This is an evasion build, so I'm definitely going to be running pretty much all the evasion gear, minus the chest, which I will explain in a minute. But the first one you want is the Alpha Wolf's Hollow, mainly because it gives you that +2 to Aura Gem, so you get that +2 on your Hatred for more cold damage, and then you get the cold resistance, as well as the main key for this point is the reduced mana reserve, so 8% reduced mana reservation to the gems that are inside of it, or the entirety of your it's to all your aura build, or your aura items. So all of your aura will get the 8% reduced mana from that. So that'll give you that little bit extra mana. You're already getting a ton of mana regen from both War Cries, as well as you know, Arcane Surge, but this just gives you that little bit extra mana to work with. So there's that. That's the first one you want. And then also a large portion for me is that you can't be frozen with this helm on. There's a lot of things that can freeze you, especially like just opening chests and things like that, and plenty of other ways to get frozen. So I really hate getting frozen, so I wanted to make sure I got this item to be able to avoid freezing. So that's why I would definitely advise getting the Alpha's Howl Center Tricline. Now I'm going to be leaving a my PoE price. That'll be right over there. That'll be how much I actually got it for on PoE trade. So I'll do that for all the items. That's how you go with. And then over here we're going to for your body you're going to be running a Carcass Jack. It's an evasion energy shield body cloak. It gives you increases the armor evasion and increase the maximum life, increase all res. But the most important part is the 20% increased area of effect for area skills, and then the 40 to 50% increased area damage. Now, that's super important because once again, Blade Vortex gets damage increased based off of increases to the area damage. So the increased area damage from this, as well as the increased area for area skills, gives you a nice amount of damage overall. Now, this does give you a little bit of energy shield. It's not really a big deal. You're not really, you should not be focusing on energy shield as your kind of resource to live. You're getting a nice amount of health as well as a lot of evasion. It's about 250% evasion overall in the build, so you're more looking at the evasion side, but this is kind of one of those uniques that you really can't go without. So that's what we're going to be running for our chest. Heading over to our shield, my preferred shield is the Colton Halt Painted Buckler. So what this does is that it does give you the 6% increased movement speed, a large percent increased evasion. Also, it increases your maximum amount of cold res, so you get 5% cold res, and then also gives you 50% cold res overall. You also get 10 to 15% of your physical damage can be given as extra cold damage, and then it reflects cold damage to melee attackers. So, and then you get an extra chance to block, as well as having a nice 29% chance to block already. So it gives you a large amount of block chance, as well as reflecting a lot of your cold damage to melee attackers, and then it also does that nice conversion of physical damage to cold damage for you. So this is a huge unique item you need, and again, all of your costs that I got my items for on PoE trade will be right over there. So just make sure you guys check that out. Now, there is a prophecy for this to be able to get the Colton Soul, but I am not particularly needing that. I don't really care about fire damage or anything like that. This build is focused on cold damage and physical conversion from physical to cold damage. So it's nice that it's there, and that's the prophecy, and I will pull that up, but it's not important. The next thing you want to do is the Harem Sorrows. I'm sorry if I brutalized that. This is going to be your clubs. Now, what this gives you is the increase the strength, the increase the cold damage. It adds cold damage to your spells and attacks. It also gives you a little bit of evasion, as well as some extra cold res, so 20 to 30% cold res. And then 50% of physical damage converted to cold damage. So this is huge again for our conversion, because you're going to be wanting to convert as much of your physical damage as you can to cold damage. It also reflects some cold damage to melee attackers. Now, this item is really nice because of two reasons. One, it has a super low level requirement, so you can run it pretty much the entire game, so you don't have to spend all that much, especially. And the same thing for the Colton Home. They have extremely low level requirements, so you can start wearing them really early, so you can get all your link setups for them all set up really early, and then you don't need to change them for the majority of and for actually pretty much any more portion of the game. So those are the two that you really get to level with a lot of. And then there's also the last one you get to level with is the magnet belt. So this is going to be our unique belt. Gives you a nice increase in stun duration on enemies, but also it gives you a large physical damage increase. So that physical damage, again, we're looking to convert it to cold damage, so you get that large amount of physical damage, and then it gives you a nice amount of strength, as well as really good flash recovery. Which is really important when I get to covering Flasks. In the next portion, I'll cover the Flasks that I find are really nice for the build. Yeah, so we'll cover. So what you gotta see is that you get a nice amount of flash recharge, because 50% increase gives you a large amount of flask recharge. So you pretty much recharge flask on every single pack kill. You'll have full flask, so it's really, really nice for clearing and stuff like that. And then also, the extra bonus from it is with the 200 more strength, you get 25 to all elements resistances. This is really great because it helps you maintain capped reses throughout the leveling process. And now cold res is always going to be capped. This build will always have capped cold res because and when I say capped for cold res specifically with this build, it'll be 80% cold res, not the 75 as usual. You'll have super high capped res because of this item, as well as the rest of the cold items from your build. So that's all the main uniques for gear wise that I wanted to cover. And then we're gonna head over to Path of Building, and I want to make sure that I show you guys what I run for the other portions of my gear. So what you're gonna get for the other portions of the gear, again, this is there's two ways to play this. So you'll get for my particular playstyle, I want to run like a spell void sector. So you get the increased elemental damage, the increased spell damage, and some nice critical chance, as well as some mana cost. And that's my preferred item. But you can also run a spell wand, so something like just any spell wand. There's no really good uniques for this build for as far as weapons go, but you can just run a nice spell wand with a lot of spell damage, and you'll be great as far as that if you're doing the spell side of it. If you're doing the spell damage side of it, so you're running a wand and then you're doing the flame dash portion of it, and then you're just gonna run some evasion boots. There's a couple unique evasion boots, but I don't particularly run any. There's not really a need for it, so you get a nice high evasion roll for boots. And then you want to run a strength and intelligence necklace, so a nice agate amulet with whatever you want on it. Now again, you can grab a couple unique items, but I don't focus on that. It's not really necessary. So there's just nice agate amulet would do you well. And then I run 1 topaz and 1 ruby ring, just because your fire resistance and lightning resistance are gonna be lower than your cold res, because you're always gonna have that capped cold res, but getting that extra capped lightning and fire res is really easy. So just by running, I don't mean to do that. Ruby ring. Yeah. So just by running those two, it gives you a nice roll on that way. And then, so that's what you're gonna look for in terms of gear. And then the next portion I'll cover Flasks as far as everything with that. So I'll head over to that in a minute. And right now I'm gonna head over there and head over and describe all of the flasks that I suggest you use. Alright guys, so continuing on, I'm going to talk about the 3 flasks that offer you the best increases amount of damage you do for output, as well as nice amounts of defense. Now, the first 2 are relatively easy to get. They don't have a particularly large PoE trade cost or anything like that. However, the last one is very expensive, and that's one it's not necessary. Well, none of these flasks are actually necessary. Like the build works very well without them. However, if you really want that extra damage and really want the extra survivability or something like that, then these flasks are the ones that I say will really help you augment this build. And again, the last one is the one that's super expensive. It's pretty much got a higher cost than the entire rest of this build. So just be aware. If you have the extra cash, yes, it's very nice and you can get it. If you don't have the extra chaos, then I understand you don't necessarily need it. It's not a make or break thing for the build, but it is very nice amounts of damage. So the first one is the Aziri's Promise. This is a chaos resistance flask, but it also gives you damage leech, as well as extra physical damage. You gain extra physical damage and 15% to 20% of your physical damage is given as extra chaos damage, and 10 to 15% of your elemental damage is given as extra chaos damage during the flask. So what this does is it gives you a nice amount of leech, so it gives you even more boss sustain and stuff like that. And then what it also does is that it gives you that chaos resistance, because this build is a little bit lacking in chaos resistance, I'll be honest. It is a little bit lacking in chaos resistance, but the 35% is nice as well from this flask. And then that chaos damage gives you the leech, gives you a nice amount of damage leech, so you can leech a lot of their health, and you're doing both cold and still doing a little bit of physical damage, so you'll get a large amount of leech from that. So this is more of my sustained flask and stuff like that. So that's the first one I want to talk about. It's not very expensive, so the price again is right over there. And then the next one is going to be the Wise Oak Flask. This is an elemental resistance flask. So what it does is during the flask effect, you get 10% reduced damage taken of each element for which your uncapped elemental resistance is lowest. So for us in this build, your highest one is always going to be cold res. Your cold res is always going to be super higher, so you're always going to get the extra damage from that. And then your fire and lightning resistance are always going to be a little bit less. So what you want to do, with how this really helps us, is for when you're running into certain mobs which do lightning damage or fire damage, depending on how low either your fire or lightning is, you'll get the increase. You get the nice reduced damage from those. So that's really nice for this build, because even though you'll still pretty much end up with capped reses, especially if you have this flask, it'll always give you that little bit of extra defense for those two things. And then what it also does is it gives you 10 to 15% damage penetration for each element for which you have uncapped elemental resistance as its highest. For us, that's always going to be cold damage, and since we already do kill damage, we'll get nice amount of increased cold damage penetration, which is awesome for this flask. So this is why I recommend this flask. Once again, it's not very expensive. This one's actually pretty cheap, so you'll be able to grab this with no problem. Now the last one I want to talk about is a Taste of Hate Sapphire Flask. Now, what this does is it gives you a nice amount of cold res, which you're already going to have. It gives you +6 to maximum cold res on use. So you'll go up from your 80% to 86% during this, and then you'll have the extra 50% cold res. What this really does though is the 20% of physical damage taken as cold damage during flask effect, and then 10 to 20% of your physical damage as extra cold damage during effect, 30% chance to avoid being chilled, and 30% chance to avoid being frozen during the flask effect. Now, this is going to be a huge amount of damage because that's 20% of your physical damage as extra cold damage. You already have a huge amount of cold damage already, and then it gives you a ton of cold res. So this is a super strong flask in our build because of the amount of cold damage we do. However, this one has an extremely high cost, so it can be very difficult to get. Now, it's not 100% necessary for the build, but it is nice to have. Even if you can afford it, it's very nice to have. If you can't afford it, I understand. You don't need it, and it's fine. The build will do tons of damage without it. You'll be completely fine to clear content. But if you can get your hands on it, you'll do so much. You'll do so much more, and it's really nice to have. So those are the two main flasks you want to run, and then the last two flasks you just want to run are 1 mana pot. You don't particularly need mana pots. You'll have a nice regenerating anyways. But if you can get a nice mana pot with some poison removal, it'll be nice for you. And then all you want is just, a nice health flask with some extra with bleed removal, because bleed is a pain in the ass, so you want to be able to remove the bleed. So those are the 5 flasks that I would run for my setup. And again, if you don't have money for the Case of Hate, all you can do is just swap that out with a nice health potion and maybe get an extra bleed removal flask, or extra poison removal flask, or even just an increased invasion flask. Anything really is pretty much acceptable with that. So those are my flask setup, and in the next portion we'll be heading into the skill tree, and and then wrapping it up with a nice video to show you guys how the build actually works with me running through probably just an Izaro trial or something like that. So I hope you guys are enjoying this video so far, and in the next portion I'll cover everything as far as the skill tree. Alright guys, so this is going to be the final portion of our build guide, as far as me talking. So what you're going to see here is now I'm going to go through all of this builds. I have 4 current setups as far as the build itself. So what this is basically going to do is each setup is basically how I leveled as I went through it. So the first setup will be like completing up to level 40, and basically, well I hit level 40, but it's basically the Act 4 is complete. And then the next one is going to be about level 70. So we'll have level 70, and right when you hit about level 70, and then you are about to enter maps and stuff like that, that's what I'll have. And then a level 85 build, which is kind of like just, when you're starting to really hit that nice leveling curve, and then finally I'll wrap it up with an end game build. So if you ever plan on 100ing this build, which is I'm sure it's fully possible, this is what I would finish out the build with. So the first portion of that is the level 40 build, and the so what you're gonna do is, and this is why I have to admit that this build starts out a little bit weak as far as damage, because you don't really take any damage nodes for quite a bit. And a lot of your damage is just kind of required. You don't really get a lot of your damage until you really start getting your damage conversion. So it's a little bit tedious as far as like the early levels. It's not a really big deal, and it doesn't hurt too much, but it is a little bit tedious overall. So what you're going to do is start out in your evasion and life nodes. You're going to head through the evasion tree and grab finesse. Just for increased everything here, so increased life and evasion and stuff like that. And then you can head over here and grab the cold damage on the top, so it starts automatically converting your cold damage to physical damage. So this is how I would start out the early portion of the build. You just grab that, and then you want to head through, grab through all of this. If you have a nice jewel socket, and I'll talk about that towards the end of this build portion, I'll talk about what kind of jewels you want to run. If you have a nice jewel for it, then you can start this and then head up through here, grab the extra invasion here, head through this tree, grab Sentinel, grab the L-Res from the Sentinel, grab all of this life node, and as well as Path of the Warrior for the increased physical damage as well as the extra strength. Then you want to head through Shaper, and then head into the increased Potency of Will, so you get that whole Potency of Will node, as well as grabbing this node right here, which is Exceptional Performance. So that's how you want to run the build in the beginning. That's how you want to start out, set it up, and then as your first Ascendancy trial, you want to grab Onslaught. Well, you either want to grab Onslaught. I prefer Onslaught because it gives you the increased cast speed, so that helps leveling a little bit more. But if you don't really want to, or you don't need to right away, you can also grab Quartz Infusion, which gives you phasing as you kill things. So phasing is nice for, you know, not getting hit by a lot of shit, and then you can phase through a lot of damage. So that's the kind of setup you want to run. This is what it more will look like. So that's the kind of setup you want to run. It gives you a nice 9 seconds of you'll have 9 seconds on your you have 9 seconds on the duration of your Blade Vortex and stuff like that, and at this point you already have Rallying Cry, things like that. With things like Rallying Cry, things like your Flame Golem, things like your Frost Bomb, your Blade Vortex 4-link, everything like that you'll already have. So all of this duration really gives you a nice amount of time to do all the damage. Now again, depending on whether or not you have the correct type of jewel sockets, you can get this socket or not. If you don't get this socket, it's fine. You can just scale into something else. But that's how I've cleared out my first level 40 build. And then heading in towards my level 70 build, this is what I scaled into. So you'll complete this ring over here, and then you'll grab the extra life and increase in flash recovery. So you'll get a nice recovery speed, and then this is a nice health node there. You're gonna head this way and grab all of this, all these dexterity nodes. Again, if you have the jewel sockets, if you have the specific jewels, you'll grab this jewel socket. If not, it's fine to ignore that. And then you'll grab this full evasion tree, and then head up and clear out this side. So what you want to do is grab Trickery and all the elemental damage and nodes from here, and Cold-Hearted Calculation, as well as the change in the reduced chance of you getting hit by elemental damage, as well as the increased elemental damage. And then you'll grab the extra life from here, as well as this extra physical damage here. And then what you're going to do is head up here and grab through here, and then grab all of these nodes, grab this Chaos Res and extra life, and then you're going to grab Elemental Overload, because you're not too reliant on crit multiplier, but you also have a large amount of crit, you have a nice amount of crit chance because of how many times that Blade Vortex is going to hit. At this point you'll be very easily hitting the maximum amount of stacks. You'll be clearing through content like a breeze, and it won't be an issue at all. Now again, at this point in the build I do have 3 jewel sockets, because I already have the necessary jewels that I want. However, if you don't, it's fine to just scale up here, and instead of grabbing that, you can grab Ash and Frost and get the reduced 16% elemental damage, and reduced reflected elemental damage. You do a large amount of elemental damage, so this is a nice elemental node for you. You can also grab Cold and Lightning over here, so that's even more mana regen, and then extra cold damage from that. It really depends on you and what you want at this point. But this is what my level 70 build looks like as far as the tree and everything spanned out over here. As far as this side, you're completely done. So you're really only going to be focused up here towards the end of your game. Now, heading into the level 85 tree, this is my level 85 tree. This looks like, as you can see, I have finished elemental, or Ash, Frost, and Storm and stuff like that. I've also grabbed this extra fire resistance here, extra cold resistance here, because I feel like this is the point when you start to hit those negative res maps. So you want to grab the extra here, and then I grabbed another jewel socket there. So I have 4 jewel sockets in total, and then I have finished up with just Light of Divinity, so I get extra spell damage, cast speed, increased light radius, increased strength and intelligence. Just a nice portion here. So this is what an level 85 build looks like for me. So this is my skill tree and everything involved with it. And again, if you don't have the jewel sockets at this point, you might want to start crafting some, but again, it's not really a big deal because you can just head down through Light of Divinity, grab the extra elemental list, so you get the extra elemental res and then increase elemental damage, and then you can head through there and grab discipline and training, grab the increased life from that. So as a final endgame build, that's the wrong tree. As final endgame build, this is what my build fully looks like. So I have all of, what did I just click? I don't want that. Yeah, I don't want that. So this is what the final build will look like. As you can see, I finished up this entire elementalist tree node. I grabbed all the life from here. I grabbed this retribution, so again, more spell damage, more cast speed, more strength and intelligence, and I finished it out with amplify, so I get the increased area damage and increased area skills. So that's how I kind of wind out my build. Again, you can kind of skip this and grab this here if you want. You can skip a couple things and grab this here if you want, and then you can just grab so the last portion of this build I want to talk about is the jewel sockets. So the jewel sockets here are just, you know, these are the optimal, now I understand it's very difficult to get exactly this, but these are the 4 types of damage that you're really looking for to best augment the build. So you're looking for increased damage, increased physical damage, increased cold damage, and increased area damage. So those are the 4 types of jewel sockets you're really looking for. Now, as far as flexibility, what you can also run is stuff like cast speed, mana regen, life leech, stuff like that. You can run stuff like that if you want more survivability or things like that. If you feel like you're getting hit too hard, if you feel like you don't have enough health, you can run tons of things in these builds. I've got tons of flexibility in that, and you have tons of jewel sockets, so you have plenty of ways to work with that as far as the build is required. So when you fully finish the build, it's got about 190% increased life, 250% increased evasion. You've got nice, about 31% of your mana is active to you, so you got a nice amount of mana, you got tons of spam, you have tons of mana regen from Rallying Cry, as well as increased spell damage from Blade Vortex and stuff like that. You're also, oh, I missed this. I missed right here, Primal Spirit, important. So you'll grab Primal Spirit for the increased mana regen, strength, intelligence, flash charges, and stuff like that, and then also Heart of Oak, so you avoid stuns and stuff like that. I almost missed that, but yeah. So this is how the build fully looks as far as everything with the tree itself. And then heading over to the Ascendancy, final Ascendancy tree, you want to look at having, if you can't complete Uber Lab, which shouldn't be an issue at all, you're going to want to drop this right here, and then focus on grabbing this, because this is 40% increased elemental damage, and then you get a lot of phasing, which is important because phasing gives you the dodge spell damage, as well as the immune to elemental ailments, so you won't get ignited or anything like that. Well, or you already can't get frozen, but you won't get ignited or things like that during this. And then you gain this every time you get a kill, or every time you have onslaught, so things like that, it's very necessary. But if you can, after you complete Uber Lab, you want to grab the extra increased onslaught effect, so you get the increased damage, as well as more evasion to melee attacks and more evasion to projectile attacks. So this is what really helps you wind out that build as far as everything with that. And then that also gives you the increased onslaught duration, so you'll get a nice amount of everything. So this is how that full Ascendancy tree plans out, and this is how the full tree plans out. This build has a really nice amount of damage, so if I head over to the calcs, you guys can see everything. you can get a really nice amount of skill hit damage, a really nice amount of average hit damage. You get a nice amount of spell damage, area damage, stuff like that. So as you can see, almost all of your, you still do a little bit of physical damage, but especially in combat, but especially during this build's what ends up is doing a large amount of cold damage. So you get, as you can see, all of your physical damage is converted over to that cold damage. So you do a huge amount of cold damage. You're not about 99% of your cold, 99% of your damage is converted to cold damage. So you're getting a huge amount of damage, a huge amount of cold damage, huge amount of cold pen and stuff like that. And then it says nice regen, nice life regen, nice energy spell, or nice mana regen, everything pretty much you would want. You get nice amount of health, so 109%. I was really frustrated when I was making this build, I'm going to be honest with you, because I really wanted to get about 200% life for you guys. I just could not manage it, but you know, things happen. I understand. 190% is still a nice amount, so you should have no problems clearing anything at all. So this is the full build. I'm gonna just hop over to a video and show you guys. To end out the video, I'll just hop over and show you guys how this build works and how everything runs together when I'm actually running through it in combat. But I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Again, this is my first tutorial, so I really would appreciate any thoughts, comments, anything you guys would advise for future videos like this. And once again, if you guys end up playing this build, just give me a shout out, hit me up, send me a tweet, something like that. Anything, just show me how you guys feel about it. And I would love to get more responses on it and more thoughts on it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this build. I hope you guys enjoy my future content. I'm really enjoying playing PoE, and I'm having so much fun making all these builds, hanging out on different Twitch streams, and checking out all these different Twitch streamers of this game. And I'm having so much fun. So I hope you guys continue to enjoy things, and hope you guys continue to support my channel. Now I'm gonna head out. I'm done talking for now. I'll catch you in the next episode, and in my future story playthroughs and my future build guides to come. I'll catch you in those. So I'm gonna head out now, though. Nuie out. Alright guys, so the last portion of this build, I just want a build guide. I just wanted to do a quick labyrinth run through to let you guys see what the build looks like in action and everything that's involved with it. I'm going to drop myself out of the camera as soon as I get in here so that you guys can really see how I rotate through my flask and how I look at everything, and you can see how the flash recharge rate goes and how my health levels decrease and stuff like that. So I'm just going to try to cover everything that you would ever hit inside of a raid. So I'll just make sure that you guys see everything with that. So but quickly I'm going to cover how this build works when you go in here. So what you're going to do, first off, before everything, you're just going to first off summon your golem. Then you're going to head over here, turn on your herald device, and then you're going to turn on your hatred. Now for newer players, when you have buffs active like this, you don't need to have them on the front of your screen or on your toolbar. You can actually take them off your toolbar entirely and they'll still stay active, as you can see. So the reason I do this is so that I don't accidentally click them and turn them off in the middle of fights or anything like that, because I typically rotate between these two and then nothing else really happens. But my golem tends to die, so I also keep him alive as well. So I just want you to be aware I am over leveled when I run in here, so it's going to go very quickly, and it's going to be everything pretty much conquered very easily. But the purpose again is just to show you how the build actually works together and how it's all utilized. So I'm gonna head out here, I'm gonna throw on some music and let you guys enjoy this.
You call me a sinner, I call myself a saint. Living the hallelujah, today we close to pray. I'm feeling all happy, don't care about the fame. So now we living like it was our last day. Don't mind the gravity, all the things around. We just focus on what's now. Tonight we living, tonight we living, tonight. got the money in my pocket, but I'm happy, so fuck it. Yo, I'm feeling so fine, I'll be drinking my wine, flying high like a rocket. I got you, you got me. Do you wanna join in my drinking spree? I got you got me, and we don't know where else to be. We got no problems to worry about now. We got no others to break us down. We got no problems to worry about now. We got no others to break us down. The money in my pocket, but I'm happy, so fuck it. Yo, I'm feeling so fine, I'll be drinking my wine, flying high like a rocket. I got you got me. Do you wanna join in my drinking spree? I got you got me, and we don't know where else to be. We got no problems to worry about now. We got no others to break us down. We got no problems to worry about now. We got no others to break us down. I'm happy, so fuck it. Yo, I'm feeling so fine, I'll be drinking my wine, flying high like a rocket. I got you got me. Do you wanna join in my drinking spree? I got you got me, and we don't know where else to be.
I shut my eyes, trying not to speak, pretend that I'm dreaming. I smell your breath, not listening, but I still hear you screaming. Going under. One step away till you hear what I'm saying. Sounds like thunder. And the clouds are closing in. You see, I know this, but the last days in real life I've noticed. Losing focus, breaking up from our life as we know it. If someone had told me that I will take off and find something greener, greener than gold. Making me shiver. He's not like you, don't want him to. He's more like the river, growing stronger. When we're alone, there's no you in the picture. Paint by numbers isn't how I wanted to. You see, I know this, but the last days in real life I've noticed. Losing focus, breaking up from our life as we know it. If someone had told me that I will take off and find something greener, greener than gold.
Alright guys, so that's what it's going to look like when you run through everything. So I hope you enjoyed this whole guide and everything that I've done. I had a lot of fun making it, and I had a lot of fun. I'm having so much fun playing this build. It's just so much fun. It's got such great clear speed, it's got such great damage, as you can see. Even though I'm pretty over level for this area, it's still got really good damage, and it just moves you through areas so fun. It's so great. I hope you guys get to play it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys continue to watch my channel and check out any new guides that I create. So I'm gonna head out. I'm gonna catch you all later. Nuie out.
Heaven sent my residence, it's heaven, just visiting, blending.